That didn't go. All right, boys and girls, we're back. I know we had a little bit of a hiccup. There was some speculation that I was beating Joe in some domestic violence way, but the Band-Aids from basketball, we're good. We're ready to go. Joe, I could not be more excited because looking forward to week 2. There's just week 1 we won a bucket of money, and we couldn't have been more on the money for a great many things that we've been talking about for the entire summer. And it just feels great to actually have some sort of definite confidence moving forward that it confirmed all the things that we were looking forward to from the summer, right? It was a bit of a sloppy week. It's always a little strange week 1. It was a little disappointing in some ways. But for the most part, it was an awesome week of football. There were a lot of great value plays last week, some interesting season-long plays, things like that. But how did it feel getting to watch the first week of football?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was a whole lot of fun, except for the first Monday night game.
Yeah, that's true. We won't talk about that. We'll just stick to fantasy. We'll just stick to fantasy on this one. And for that purpose, it was really good in some ways, not so great in other ways. Some things that we expected to happen happened. They maybe happened a little bit different way than we actually thought that they were happening. But you know how we do it, guys. We want to tell y'all. The majority of what we want on this stream is to make you better fantasy players, right? We're trying to help you figure out how to construct the best lineups, how to draft the best teams. And so when we're right on something, we want to tell you the reasoning behind why we were right on it, like why we expected it to happen and why that wound up happening. But we also want to tell you why we were wrong on things and when we were wrong on things, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to recap we're going to recap all the games from last week. I'm going to run through a list of things that we were wrong on and why we were wrong on those things. And then we're also going to come back around with what we were right on and how we came to the conclusion of probably those things happening and what happened. So, and then we're going to move forward to waiver pickups, because I know some of you guys have picked up waivers through Wednesday, but some people don't go through until Thursday. So, and that'll be tomorrow morning. So we'll go through waiver pickups. And then after that, we'll go into some of the games that are happening next week, and we'll talk about some DFS. We'll talk about some season long things. So let's get into it. We got a lot of stuff to get through. So Joe, we talked about a lot of things that should happen the first week, obviously leading up through the summer. And then we talked about a lot of things in more specificity as far as DFS play was concerned for last week on last week's stream, right? So let's run through some of the things that we were wrong on, right? We were wrong about Gronk. Okay, starting off with the very first Thursday night game. My only caveat to the being wrong about Gronk is that Gronk was targeted a pretty healthy number. He had a pretty healthy number of targets. And then there was a dropped touchdown, or a touchdown that was very, very difficult catch that wound up going another way. And Gilly wound up getting that touchdown. So I want to say that we were wrong on Gronk. We definitely were. But I wouldn't say it's doom and gloom, right? Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was doom and gloom at all for Gronk. I think that of course we were wrong. He didn't have good fantasy day.
Right.
So if you spent money on him in DFS, or even if you started him in season long, which you should do every week,
right,
he didn't deliver for you. And there's some reasons behind it. Some of it is just kind of fluky. He had a really good red zone target and didn't make a catch it's a hard catch, but that Gronk usually makes. And additionally, he was guarded by probably the only person or one of the only people who can legitimately guard him in the league, in Eric Berry. And so I think that this week, especially against the Saints again, who don't have anybody who can guard anybody, especially Gronk, you should fire him up. And for the rest of the season, as long as he's healthy, he's still the tight end one. But this is the risky run when you have an offense with a lot of options, and the Patriots do have that.
Right. I think that's a great point, is that sometimes those really great tight end options get lost amongst a myriad of other options. And that even happened on the Chiefs side this time too as well. We didn't specifically call this play out because we thought that the Patriots would take it away, but Kelsey was rather quiet too. He actually had more runs than he did have pass reception. So, I mean, they were trying to get him involved. It's just tough sometimes when Bill Belichick is game planning specifically against you. So these things happen, and you're right. Barry is a really, really good coverage guy for tight ends. He's now out for the year, but he did a great job covering Gronk, and they have a lot of other options. So moving on to two other tight ends that we were wrong about, in one way, one in the other way, Austin Hooper and Kyle Rudolph. Now, Kyle Rudolph was... we were a little wrong on him, I think, just because there were so many other things going positively for the Vikings that they didn't even really need to check down. They didn't need to use him really much at all. So I think he would have been a better play had the Saints put up anything better of a defensive effort. But I know that you were calling for Rudolph as one of your top plays last week. Is your take anything different, or do you just think that they didn't even need to use him because they were just doing so well otherwise offensively?
Well, the reason I was calling for Rudolph, and will continue to call for him the rest of the year, unless this keeps up, is that Sam Bradford is kind of the check down king.
Yep.
He and Alex Smith really are the check down kings. And in week one, as crazy as it happens, both of those guys were chucking the ball deep because people were so unbelievably open that even the check down king could throw it to him.
Yeah.
So I don't expect people to continue to be that unbelievably open 40 yards down the field. So long term, I still think that Kyle Rudolph's going to be a really, really solid option, and Sam Bradford's going to continue to check the ball down to him.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny. Now, on the other side of the coin, I told you guys not to play Austin Hooper for anything. A lot of people ask me, and this goes back from last year as well, with Austin Hooper just not doing anything to super excite me. And then, of course, he blows up. He's the second biggest tight end of the week. But this is one where this is one of those things where we can't check the box score, right? We got to use our eyes. We got to watch the game. The reason that he was his numbers were so insane was because Matt Ryan literally found him wide open 40 yards downfield, and he ran for an 80-yard touchdown. And then his second touch of that was his first touch of the game. His second touch of the game was another blown coverage. He was wide open, and then he ran for another 30 yards to get like a 44-yard gain. So he had two touches for like 128 yards and a touchdown. That was not because Austin Hooper is a part of the game plan and he's a really excellent player. I'm not saying he's bad, but you can just tell that he's not part of the game plan the way that some of these other tight ends are, right? Like, we'll talk about him later on, but Ertz was part of the game plan in every way possible. He was basically the slot receiver, and I think he had 8 or 9 catches on 8 or 9 targets, right? Carson Wentz loves the guy. He's a part of the game plan. They want to get the ball to him. They almost force it to him. Austin Hooper is not that guy. So if you played him, great. I'm not telling you you did the wrong thing. You just don't count on that. Like, you took him as the lucky guy. That's fine, but don't expect him to get 10 targets a week because that's not part of the game plan. That offense is going to try and run through the running game, through passing to the running backs, and then also by playing through Julio Jones with some ancillary receivers. They'll take some shots deep. They'll use Austin Hooper as needed, but he's not going to get 10 targets a week. So, moving on, a couple of things, a couple of receivers and a couple of running backs. I personally, two guys that I want to admit I was just so wrong on all through the offseason, and then specifically this week as well, wound up exploding also. Randall Cobb and Golden Tate were both people that I wasn't necessarily terribly off of, but I thought that they were getting drafted just way above their pay grade, and I didn't think that they were going to be, Cobb specifically, I didn't think they were going to be as big of parts of their offense as they wound up being. And Cobb is sort of a shifty guy, so he really helps in the Seattle game. He may fade a little bit more towards the rest of the season. But I'm wrong. I was wrong on him. Tate had like 15 targets and Cobb had like 16 targets. They were literally like two of the most heavily targeted guys of the entire week. It was just a bad call by me. I probably should have been a little bit more on those guys. Let's see, who else do we have? John Brown in that same exact Arizona game wound up being heavily targeted. But this is the caveat to John Brown. We told you guys not to play him, and that still wound up sort of being right. DJ got hurt in this game, and a lot of his targets came after David Johnson got hurt, and there's no way that we were going to predict that David Johnson got hurt, right? You know what I'm saying? So John Brown still mostly runs one route, and we still wouldn't recommend the play for him for much of the rest of the year. I mean, Joe, do you see it any differently? Those he may be a higher play now, right? But I still think in week 1 it was the right call to say to sit him, right?
Yeah, I mean, we hadn't seen a lot out of John Brown, and the way that I like to do it in general is like I hate getting zeros, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's gonna cost you a week if a guy gets you zeros, and he didn't get you zeros, but he was listed on the depth chart as a 4th receiver, and we hadn't seen him play in basically a year because of all of his sickle cell problems and his slow healing issues. So, we missed. I don't feel terrible about it, but we missed.
Right. That's exactly right. I think that's the point here, is that he may be a better play now. It's something to consider with DJ being out. That's obviously a part of their game plan, the way that they adjusted. We'll see how that moves forward, but I don't think it was a terrible thing to say to sit him in week 1. His targets were really down until DJ went out, and that's just something that you can't predict. So a couple of more kind of go long guys, if you will. We bet on Marquise Goodwin a lot this week, Joe, and I don't know if I'm ready to call this one a miss. They threw downfield to Marquise Goodwin a whole lot, the 49ers did throughout that game.
He was open.
Yeah, he was. And I'm going to keep betting on him. Hoyer outthrew him a couple of times. Goodwin made a bad play on a ball that I thought was pretty well thrown. And then the 49ers overall just had a bit of an odd game flow, and I'm not expecting that so much to happen from them in the future. I think this football team is going to get better. I'm going to keep probably betting on Goodwin, but we missed for the week. He only had 5 points. We'd have cashed hugely had Brian Hoyer and Marquise Goodwin just connected on one, much less 2 of those, right? I mean, Joe, what were we? We multiplied our money multifold, and that was with Hoyer and Goodwin getting 5 points apiece, I think. If they had connected on either one of those, we probably would have moved up 100, 200 spots at least. Right. So
okay, for sure.
Yeah, at least if not, and if they had connected on a couple, we might have been very close to the top of the money. So woulda, coulda, shoulda. It happens. We missed on that one. And then Emmanuel Sanders, this one lights me up pretty hard, because Emmanuel Sanders almost had 1 touchdown at the end of the first quarter, I think. And then if there was a frog hair's worth of extra grass under his foot in the third quarter, they would have called that a touchdown. He'd very nearly had a 2-touchdown game. And Benny Fowler's plays were both broken plays. So you guys need to make sure that you understand Benny Fowler is not like the guy moving forward. DT had the most targets. It really wasn't Emmanuel Sanders' day, like I was trying to tell everybody. It just didn't connect. It just didn't meet up, and sometimes those things happen. So we were wrong about that, but keep a keen eye when there's a really good first cornerback that's going to shadow Demaryius Thomas. It's likely going to be an Emmanuel Sanders day, so keep an eye out for that. It was a good day for Emmanuel Sanders. He just couldn't put it together. So the running backs that we were wrong about, DeMarco Murray, Dalvin Cook, and Rob Kelly. Now, I have to claim the Dalvin Cook one as a personal thing. Joe told you guys to play him. I was a little more off on him, but everybody needs to understand, I wasn't telling you not to play Dalvin Cook because I don't like Dalvin Cook, right? I needed to see their O-line produce something at any modicum of decency at all. And I thought they played much better, but I think this was also a product of the Saints generating zero pressure whatsoever, right? So I'm not saying that Dalvin Cook is a bad player by any means. I actually think he's pretty talented. I think he's one of the better backs in the league, and I think he's going to be really good there. I was happy to see him get fed. They just fed him. Lat Murray played 4 snaps total, I think. He got the ball 3 times on 4 snaps. Jerick McKinnon played way more than him, and he was still only somewhere in the low teens as far as snap count. I love that. That's great. They played Dalvin Cook, I think, 50-plus snaps. That's phenomenal. I want to see that, so I'm really happy about him. Fire him up all the way through unless they play against somebody with just an insane defensive front, and even then I would still probably fire him up. DeMarco Murray's offensive line, especially in the first half, just really looked like crap, and Rob Kelly.
Well, I certainly was advocating for Rob Kelly. I know that you have been a lot lower on him than I've been, and so I was wrong on that one, and you were right on that one.
Well, it wasn't even so much. I advocate him a lot for him in DFS too. His value was so low. I mean, they valued him at what, $4,300. All he needed was to return 8 points for you or something like that. He got 10 touches and 30 yards total. He didn't get a ball. He didn't get even a look from the receiving department, which is probably a good thing. But my biggest concern out of this backfield is that he played 33 snaps and Chris Thompson played 30 snaps, right? So
it's a game flow problem. I mean, if they're winning,
partially,
then Kelly will play more, and if they're losing, Thompson will play more.
Yeah, there's no doubt. But they did split a lot of snaps, and he only got 10 attempts. They're just not good at rushing the ball. And I expressed concern about that more before the beginning of the season. But it's just come to a head even more, is that they just are not, they are not that interested in running the ball. So those are the things that we were wrong about. Now, let's get to the things that we were right about. And we're going to also tie this into recapping the games from the week. This is a long list of stuff, and it's not that we're soothsayers or anything. Sometimes we'll be right, sometimes we'll be wrong, but a lot of coaches tipped their hat at what they were doing, and a lot of players gave us very good indication as to what should have happened this week. So starting off with the Pats Chiefs game, we've been saying all offseason that Gilly was the goal line guy. And what happened when they got in the red zone, Joe?
Three Gilly touchdowns. Three carries for 3 yards in the red zone or something like that.
Yeah, you know how many yards you need to get a touchdown? Ask Melvin Gordon. You need 1. You need 1 yard to get a touchdown if you're right on the 1 yard line. And I got to admit, I pussed out a little bit last week. I wanted to say Gilly 2 touchdowns. I would have never said Gilly 3 touchdowns. That's real bold. But I almost said 2 touchdowns, and I backed off and said 1, and now I just look like an idiot because I had the yards on the mark. I said 40 to 60 yards and 1 touchdown. I really wanted to say 2. He wound up getting 3. I think that he probably, I mean, there's no way he's going to keep up at that rate, but Gilly is obviously the goal line guy. You need to fire him up if you think that the Pats are going to be ahead in any way. And this just goes to show, especially with also Blunt showing out in Philly, this is not a LeGarrette Blunt thing. This is not a name on the back of the jersey thing. Rip Mike Gillislee's name off of the jersey. Whoever the goal line guy for the Patriots is, as long as he has legs, he's going to score. Okay, this is probably a guy that's going to get 14 plus touchdowns and right around anywhere from 800 to 1,000 yards, nothing more than that, but he's going to get a lot of touchdowns. So especially in standard leagues, this is the absolute way to go. Don't sell high. This isn't a fluke. Like, this is the guy that's going to get it in the Patriots backfield. So we knew Gilly from the start. We talked about Andy Reid's running back so many times. Joe, who did you draft all over the place? Who was the player?
I was all over Kareem. I was all over Spencer Ware before he got hurt. Not because I think Spencer Ware is good. I was telling you even before the season started that I knew by the end of the season that Kareem Hunt would be taking his job.
That's
exactly I think Spencer Ware is actually terrible. But yeah, I was all over Kareem Hunt before the season, and it doesn't have a lot to do with Kareem Hunt. It has something to do with him. I think he's better than Spencer Ware, but it has more to do with the fact that Andy Reid's running backs over his 18-year coaching career averaged 16 touchdowns a season.
Right.
It's pretty freaking good.
It's great.
And Kareem Hunt was available in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds in some leagues. So 16 touchdowns in those rounds is going to win you your league.
Kareem Hunt was especially early. If you drafted earlier in the season, he was available way later than that too. People were really not picking up on him, and that's the thing. It's another one. Just Kareem Hunt is talented. I'm not trying to take anything away from Kareem Hunt, but rip the name off of his jersey, and the guy is still productive. We told you he'd be no worse than 15th, and he will be no worse than 15th. There's just no way. He is in too good of a running. Yeah, that's true too. What is he on pace for? 4,000 yards and like 40 touchdowns or something. You know, the system is too good for running backs, and that's the point here. The system is too good. Spencer Ware would have done, no worse than 18th, and Kareem Hunt will do no worse than 15th. He'll probably be closer to, 8 to 10. He'll probably be somewhere, maybe even higher than that, but he'll definitely be, somewhere around there. We talked about Cooks. We know what he was in New Orleans. We know what he is here at the Patriots. They obviously don't want to use him any different. We told you what he is. That's what he's going to be. Having said that, we'll talk about him in DFS for this coming week. This one will be an anomaly. And then I talked about Tyreek Hill, how you should fire him up in tournament play. The Chiefs want the ball in his hands. Don't worry about whoever's going to shadow him. Don't worry about any of that. The only thing that gets in between Tyreek Hill and him scoring points is him catching the ball. He's not good at that, but they're good at getting him in his hands one way or the other. Am I right, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I was low on Tyreek Hill for that exact reason, that he's not a proper receiver. He doesn't catch the ball like a receiver. He catches the ball like a running back, which means that down the field he's going to have some bad drops. He's going to have a lot of drops when he's under pressure. But, man, Andy Reid is really good with his gimmick plays. They're going to manufacture ways to get him the ball. He's going to get probably 10 touches a game, 10 to 12 between runs and catches. And anytime he gets the ball in his hands, he's a threat to take it to the house. So you might have some low scoring weeks with him. They're never going to be terribly low because he's always going to get enough touches to do something.
That's right.
But man, he's always a threat to take it to the house and get a 2-touchdown, 150-yard game just from a couple of plays.
For sure. Like you said, he's not a proper receiver, but he's got 4.2 speed and he gets the ball enough times. Whether he had the second most carries in the game. Not the backup running back. He had the second most carries in the game. It's like Charcandrick. They don't even care about Charcandrick West because he's not that good of a player. He's just an Andy Reid guy.
That one.
He's just another Andy Reid guy. And so Tyreek Hill, they just want the ball in his hands, so they're going to get the ball in his hands. I was really happy to see that. I was happy to see his volume, and he actually did catch better in that game than I thought he would. Maybe he'll improve on that throughout the season. I think it's good to fire him up. He, like you said, he has a good floor. So moving on from that one, we had the very first game was the Pittsburgh-Cleveland game. Joe, I think one of the most interesting parts of this entire game was I thought this game was actually pretty poorly coached by the Cleveland side because all I saw was DeShone Kizer running around and chucking the ball long, and he clearly isn't good at chucking the ball long. They drew up no plays for him to get the ball out of his hands and into his playmakers' hands short off the line, right? Duke Johnson literally ran long on every play. They had the middle of the field wide open. Like, I don't know why you don't take advantage of that. So other than that being pretty poorly coached, and I'm a fan of Hugh Jackson, I thought Kizer played about as expected. We told you he wasn't going to play all that great. You were all over this. You talked about how he's going to struggle in the beginning of the season. How do you think he played?
I mean, he's fine. He's good enough to support Corey Coleman.
Right.
Which is kind of, what we need him to be from a fantasy perspective. Like, hopefully none of you are starting him in any meaningful way at this point in the season. Maybe by the end of the season, he'll have grown enough to be startable.
You talking about Kizer? Talking about Kizer?
Yeah, Kizer.
Yeah,
Kizer. In DFS things or whatever. But we're not looking at how is Kizer doing because we care about Kizer as a fantasy player. We care about can he support the other players in their offense.
Can he not Brock the rest of the cast?
Yeah, that's right. And he didn't Brock them. They scored some points. He got Coleman a touchdown. He threw a good pass to Kenny Britt that Kenny Britt dropped.
Yep.
And so he was good enough, I think. It's clear that the Steelers and other teams are going to do this too. The Steelers were saying, like, we're not going to let Kroll run on us.
Right.
They're going to make Kizer beat us. And he did enough, honestly, especially in the second half of the game. He did enough to keep the game close. Mm-hmm. So if he's able to do that consistently, it's going to open up the running game eventually because teams are going to have to try and stop him.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I think you're going to see more out of the Ravens this week with trying to stop the running attack as well. I think that's going to be the game plan and force Kizer to beat you. I very much expect I have some faith in this coaching squad. I think that they will find a way to get the ball out of Kizer's hands, get it into Seth DeVolve's hands as a check down more often, get it into Duke Johnson's hands earlier, have these guys run shallower routes, and then find a way to take some shots downfield where Kizer can still stay comfortable. But I want to see him stay in the pocket a little bit more and develop a bit more as a comfortable pocket passer. We'll see. With this Ravens defense, they look pretty good. So the other things that we were talking about in this game, we told you to sit Lev Bell. Joe, this was one of the easiest decisions in the book. You scream this from the mountaintops. It's a no-brainer. The guy comes back. He's 3 days into the lineup or whatever, and I mean it's a no-brainer.
These guys are all professionals. You can't show up 4 days before the first game and expect to be the best player in the league. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, especially when this is another one where it's a systemized running game, right? Their system is very good for running the ball. I actually thought Cleveland did a pretty good job at stopping this particular run game, but it's the system. So Le'Veon Bell is a really good player, but he can't just take over a game by himself without being in the room and being a part of what's going on, play design wise, running through it, getting his reps. This is something that you need to practice over and over again to get crisp and be ready to go on game day. And you saw it. Connor got a lot of carries in this game. Not that he was overly productive. No one really was, but Connor got a bunch of touches in this game because, like you said, Tomlin wasn't just going to let him run loose 1,000 times in the game. It just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, you're not going to give a guy he's probably in good shape, but he's not in football. You're not going to give a guy who hasn't been hit in 9 months 50 carries. That's or 50 touches or 30 touches or whatever he usually gets. It's just not. It's not responsible. They have an entire season that they need to have Le'Veon Bell healthy for. They weren't going to risk him in the first game when he's not fit.
Yeah, and when we've screamed about OTAs being eliminated being a major factor for people getting hurt more, and this guy has not only not gone through extended camp or anything, he's missed extra time, so you don't want to let that guy be getting hit and stuff. That's just a bad idea. So we talked about Road Ben. This is a guy that you always sit on the road. He is Road Ben. It's I'm going to start I'm going to take his name backwards, and that's going to be his name on the road, and then he's going to be Ben Roethlisberger at home. He has this alter ego that he goes into on the road. Don't ever play Road Ben. Don't do it. You don't have to worry about it for the rest of your natural born life. Don't do it ever.
Like he, most quarterbacks, you can look at the matchup and see how they're going to do. For Ben, it honestly doesn't matter. If he's playing at home, he's going to do good. If he's playing on the road, he's going to be terrible. It doesn't matter what the matchup is.
We don't have to say anything again. Antonio Brown, we talked about him to a certain extent. I just wanted to bring him up because I love gushing about Antonio Brown, Joe. This guy, even when he's in the wrong spot, he's in the right spot. I don't understand how he does it. He's the best wide receiver in football. He's just incredible.
Playing every week.
It's just unbelievable. So, and the other thing that we talked about was Corey Coleman and Ben's tight end. Ben does love his tight ends. Jesse James was pretty open, kind of like Hooper was, but you can tell that he's more involved in the game plan. This is the difference of what I'm kind of trying to tell you. If you're going to pick one of those guys, I don't care which one's more athletic. I don't care about that. Pick which one is more of a part of the game plan, and the quarterback likes the guy. And that happens to be or the Pittsburgh tight end rather than the Atlanta tight end. So we talked about Ben's tight end. It's obviously not Vance McDonald. Sorry about that. I thought Jesse James was going to get lost in the way a little bit more, but the outlaw is still around and still gunslinging. Kroll's snaps were really something positive to see. I thought, he got 17 carries. I think that's going to improve throughout the year. So can you think of anything else that we missed on that game?
No.
I mean,
pretty good.
We talked about that game a whole lot when it was coming up, because there were a lot of players in this that potentially had some sort of value,
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a fun game. I mean, yeah, and Martavis Bryant is his first game back in 2 years. Didn't do anything. He'll be better.
Yeah.
Next game was Falcons Bears. This game I think went not as a lot of people expected, but I think we were pretty right about this game, excepting the Austin Hooper shenanigans. We expected the Bears to keep it close, the Falcons offense to struggle, and we saw both of those things happen. One thing I was a little surprised about that happened was that Devontae Freeman didn't get a lot of touches compared to Tevin Coleman. They were pretty much 50-50 as far in the touch department.
Yeah. I think it was 14-12 in the split. I think their snaps were a bit different than that, if I'm not mistaken. They were, Devontae Freeman played 36 snaps. Tevin Coleman played 24. So the snap count was in favor to Freeman a bit, but you're right. It was a little worrying. I don't know. It's worrying for Freeman owners, obviously, but for Coleman owners, I mean, this is a pretty good sign. You can play this guy as, a back end RB2, a fairly decent flex from week to week, especially once bye weeks start coming along. I mean, he had 10 points in a PPR league. That's not bad. That's a guy that won't get you zero with that kind of volume. I mean, he's got a pretty strong floor. I expect them to run the ball more. I didn't think that they executed their game plan super well this game, but we did tell you that the Bears defense is going to be better this year than people think. I will admit, I didn't think the game was going to be this close score-wise. I just thought that the Falcons were going to struggle on offense a bit more than people thought that they were going to. So the Bears D is not bad. Vic Fangio is a genius, and they were just insanely hurt last year. So I thought that we were pretty close on the call on the Bears D this week. And Matt Ryan just didn't look great, He
didn't look comfortable. He maybe in a few weeks he will. I don't know. He definitely didn't look comfortable in this game, and might be the new play calling. Not sure what the deal with him is. But regardless, he will not be the Matt Ryan of last year. That guy's not coming back.
No chance. We told you that before the year. Hopefully you didn't draft him that way, but he just won't be that guy.
One other thing we noticed from this game was that the Bears not only do they not have any receivers, but they hate them.
They really do. They do not like their receivers. I expect Kendall Wright to get more targets. Sorry, I was wrong about that too. I told everybody that Kendall Wright would get 8 targets and you could take that to the bank, and Kendall Wright did not get 8 targets, but
I don't think he got any targets until Kevin White got hurt.
I really didn't see him on the field much at all until Kevin White got hurt. He had 4 targets this week. They all came in the second half. I expect him to still get targeted more in the future. I think that he'll still be pretty good value in DFS and stuff like that, but I would be afraid if you own a Bears receiver, which at this point you shouldn't other than Kendall Wright. Tariq Cohen is probably going to take away a decent amount of those of some of those plays, but he's another one you got to be careful. If he plays too much, he's going to get hurt. He's a really small guy. I mean, he's smaller than I am. You know what I'm saying? So it's gonna be really tough for him to get too many plays and not break. So be really careful. I know Bellamy got some targets in that game. That was purely that was purely from Kevin White being out. I think they had to adjust on the fly. I think you might see Miller get an uptick in targets, but they're gonna run the ball. They're gonna lean very heavily on running the ball in this team.
Yeah, the only 2 guys Zach Miller will be okay, but the 2 guys you really want are Jordan Howard and Cohen. Yeah. Cohen will be a reasonable flex the rest of the way, and Jordan Howard is still an RB1, a back-end RB1.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Cohen later, but I think that game was, I don't think it was a bad game, but I think it just went a little bit differently than people originally thought. So the game after that was maybe one of the most yikes games of the week. It was the Ravens and the Bengals, and we talked about this game a bunch of different times. We've talked about the Bengals all offseason and how much of a dumpster fire they were going to be. I think the scary part about this is that this Bengals game on the Cincinnati side was actually pretty well coached. Like, I think the coaches did a good job of trying to execute a game plan that would put them in a position to win the football game, and they suck too bad to execute the game plan. Like, Dalton is really, really bad, and he's in a bad way. That line is bad. For fantasy purposes, the trio of running backs is bad. It's just, man, it's rough over there. And I think that their defense is over-aggressive. I don't think that their defense has enough talent to try and execute the sort of defensive game plan that they were trying to do either. So it was just all around bad. The Ravens D was a slam dunk pick this week. We talked about them all before the week leading up to it. DFS, they were super cheap compared to what they should have been. And we talked about Flacco being eased back into the game. He was. They ran the ball 2/3 of the time, maybe a little bit more than that. I mean, that's a lot. That's 66% of the time running the ball is a very, very heavy portion. And when he did throw the ball, guess Joe, where are the 2 places Flacco throws the ball?
Really far behind the line of scrimmage.
There you go. He threw almost no intermediate throws, and the one that he did, Jeremy Maclin took it to the house. So it still looked like a long throw. So Joe, what are we going to do about the Bengals for the rest of the way?
Pick the defense that's playing against them.
Yeah, that's probably true. Play
AJ Green and no one else, and pick the defense that's playing against them. I
honestly, I don't even want to pick AJ Green that much. Like, I understand if you picked him in season long, hopefully you didn't waste a first round pick on him. You're not gonna not play him, but you got to be careful on this one. I mean, they tried so many short passes to get the ball out of Dalton's hands, and he still routinely overthrew people, threw it in the dirt, and was hit before he could even get the ball out of his hands. It was really, really rough.
He's bad when he's under pressure, and they have a terrible offensive line right now, and there's no signs of either of those things getting better this season. So
they turned the pressure up to 11 on the quarterback who's horrible under pressure. So I think that one's going to be a tough one. But the Ravens D does look really good. I enjoyed watching their defense. They look solid. So the next game was the Lions-Cardinals game. This was very interesting for a couple of different reasons. Obviously, DJ getting hurt helps no one. We hate it. It's terrible when the first overall pick goes down, no matter what. And this is why we always tell people, you can't tell the future, right? There's no such thing as a safe pick in fantasy. He was as safe as it comes, and sometimes they get hurt. It happens. He goes down for a bunch of months. See you later. Goodbye. You have to adapt. You have to figure out a way. And this is why you pick a lot of running backs and a lot of wide receivers throughout the first couple of, 10 rounds of the draft or so. You want to get as many of these guys as possible because you can try and absorb this sort of hit. It's hard, but you can do it. So, Joe, what were your takeaways from this game? I know we were right specifically. I just want to tell people I literally said verbatim. And what did you see from this game first? Tell me what you saw.
Matt Stafford's pretty good, and he really likes Jim Bob Cooter's offense.
Dude, trust the Cooter. Trust the Cooter.
Trust the Cooter. And Carson Palmer is a mess.
He sucks.
He's old and washed up, and he looked like that last year. People were hoping that he would, get healthy or rejuvenated in the offseason. Didn't look that way.
Yeah, I was really low on Carson Palmer coming into this season. I have 0.00000 shares of Carson Palmer anywhere. I probably won't own him the entire season. Maybe this week in DFS because he plays the worst defense ever known to man. But we talked about Larry getting a lot of targets. He did get a lot of targets. Carson Palmer really found a way to make him struggle to get those catches. I thought the takeaway from this game was, man, Golden Tate just got all kinds of work, and Stafford still just throws every single time in the red zone. That's wonderful. I love it. I really do. I love it. For fantasy, there's not always things that wind up working out in your favor. It is phenomenal that he throws all the time in the red zone. It's going to be a really great year for the Lions as far as fantasy is concerned. If you have Stafford, fire him up every single week. I think he's going to be a really good play. Kenny Golladay, I said last week, I told everybody on the stream, I said, Kenny Golladay is going to blow up for 2 touchdowns and everybody's going to go banana goddamn sandwich. And what happened? Kenny Golladay gets 2 touchdowns, exactly 2, no more, no less, and everybody goes banana sandwich. He was the second most added player this week. Some people had him on their lineups already. Guys, pump the freaking brakes. Kenny Golladay is their best red zone target. He's a big guy. He is going to have some really high touchdown number on some really low target number. I don't think he's a bad player, and I think he will get better as the season goes on, but you have to be careful playing guys that are the roller coaster of love. Like, you have to be really, really careful playing those guys. 2 touchdowns this week, 1 catch for 13 yards next week. 3 touchdowns this week, 2 weeks with a total of 2 catches for 14 yards. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you're getting into. He may prove me wrong, but just be careful the way that you're going to play him. Don't plug him into your lineup as some wide receiver 2 now. He's just not that guy. Tate is going to get most of the work there. If he finds a way to supplant Marvin Jones as the solidified number 2 guy, my good grace is to go ahead and play the guy more often because they throw so much. But pump the brakes on Kenny Golladay. Let's see the snap count and the volume go up before we really start to play that guy. I was impressed with the Lions offense in this one. I think Amir Abdullah is going to get a lot of touches. I think they struggle to run the ball, but I think the Cards' defensive front is pretty good. Running in this game was almost non-existent. Everybody was chucking the ball around. I think those things will level out, and I think Amir Abdullah will actually be okay in this offense until he gets hurt at least. So let's get over to what we thought was one of the next 2 games we're going to talk about are what we call the 2 best fantasy games of the week. Yeah, for sure.
In some ways they delivered, in some ways they didn't. But first one is the Raiders at Titans. Takeaways for me was the Titans' offensive line really struggled, especially in the first half.
Yeah.
It was hard for Mariota and hard for DeMarco Murray to get anything going behind them, and they just weren't getting any holes. They weren't holding up in the pass blocking. Really hurt the Titans' offense a lot in that one. I thought that Rashard Matthews and Corey Davis looked good.
Yeah, I did too.
I
thought Corey Davis looked especially good.
Corey Davis looked really good.
Yeah.
I wasn't super impressed with Mariota actually. He got his rushing touchdown, which was a nice play. Delaney Walker threw a fantastic block for him, but I thought he was a little inaccurate. It might have been because he was under pressure early and wasn't able to get comfortable. But I thought he struggled a little bit more than I was expecting him to.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting to look exactly like he did. I wasn't expecting really any of their backfield to look really like they did. Mariota clearly loves Rashard Matthews, though, so you could play that guy with confidence moving forward. He was getting drafted really late in some rounds, and I talked about him probably still being the number 1 receiver there. Decker coming in, he had a high target share. He had 8 targets. They had 10 targets to Corey Davis, 9 to Rashard Matthews, and 8 to Decker. So they had a pretty healthy target share for all of them against a suspect Raiders defense in the secondary. They're not very good, but they're improving. He just loves Rashard Matthews and he loves Delaney Walker, so you can play those guys with confidence moving forward. Davis will get better. I think my takeaway from them was that their offensive line, same as you, that their offensive line was pretty struggling. Also, I was trying to tell everybody not to play Derrick Henry. Please don't play Derrick Henry. Like, don't play him. please keep not playing him. Like, keep him firmly supplanted on the bench if you have DeMarco Murray. And if you don't have DeMarco Murray, you're just waiting on him to get hurt. I'd try and trade him to the Murray owner, really, and see if there's some kind of, some kind of value that you can get back for him if you're maybe struggling elsewhere. But on the other side of the football, it was a Cooper week. It was a Cooper week. And I could not be more aggravated that he missed 2 balls that should have also been touchdowns.
3.
This should have been 3?
They had first and goal from the 2-yard line and threw it to him 3 times, and he dropped all 3 of them.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so he had 3 balls that could have also been touchdowns. Although I got to give it to him. That play that he did score on was a monster play. That was a superstar kind of play, and it was really awesome to see him get in the end zone. A great second effort and just a great push. You could tell he wanted that. He wanted that touchdown, dude.
I think the first half, especially this game, showed you a lot of what Amari Cooper is.
Yep.
Right? He's a really good route runner. He's really dynamic with the ball in his
Excellent
hands,
route
and he
runner.
really struggles to catch the ball.
Yep. Obviously, he has a catching problem, but he had 13 targets in the game. Most of them were pretty catchable. I think Carr has been much more on target this year. He missed Cooper a lot last year when he was just wide open. He obviously still loves Krabby, but it's just some weekends. Some weekends are Cooper weeks and some weekends are Crabtree weeks. I'm going to do my best to keep calling him because I'm like 14 games in a row where I just call the guy who it's been. So it was a Cooper week. It should have been a better Cooper week. Blame Amari Cooper on dropping the touchdowns because it's not an Amari Cooper week. But this is another Amari week, so fire him up again. That game was good, but I think Lynch. My other takeaway on that one is I think Lynch is better for real football than he will be for fantasy. Don't you?
He
agree?
looked really good from a real football perspective.
Yeah, for like real football, he'll be good. I don't think he'll be overly productive for fantasy. Not necessarily his fault. I just think that Jack Del Rio does not want to run him into the ground. I think he wants him to get as many of the 16 games as he possibly can out of him, and I think it's going to work for him if he can try and limit his carries. What's the next game, Joe?
The next game is the other big game we were talking about, which is Redskins-Eagles. We were really excited about this game, thought it was going to be high scoring. It did turn out to be high scoring, not necessarily to the people we expected it to be.
Yeah.
But we were definitely right about a couple of things. One is which we said, in DFS, Carson Wentz was really our guy this week.
Such a good play for $5,300.
He delivered.
Yeah.
And DFS, Zach Ertz was our guy this week. He delivered. So we did make our money off of those guys.
We actually did. They were this was a combo that they may have hooked up as much or more than anybody else last year as a duo, and they were $8,800 total together. Like there were receivers on the board that I wouldn't have touched for over $8,800. And I mean, they were just an immense combo. There was such good value last week. You can obviously see they priced Ertz way up this week into the 5,000s, but it was obvious value. When we tell you those kind of plays, guys, you just have to stick with it. Like it's the obvious play sometimes, and we know what we're doing. So that was an easy call to me. I felt robbed in this game because that last defensive touchdown by Philly really should have been a forward pass, and I think we should have gotten one more good drive out of the Redskins. And I think they were I don't know about just starting to find their groove, but it was going positively for them. The other thing that I really like to take away was Cousins and Pryor just had a slow start. We called it. We told you that they were going to start slow. It's new receivers. It's basically new everything on offense, and they're going to struggle to run the ball. So
guys, this was Terrell Pryor's first ever game in his whole life with a real live NFL quarterback.
Yep. And a timing offense. Anything that resembles like a real offense whatsoever. Last year rather, it was basically run around and outcatch the other guy. Right? He's really good at that. He's going to get better at running his routes. I still need to watch the All-22 and see how crisp his routes looked, but from what I could tell just watching the game, he looked good, and he had 11 targets. So I like that. That's a really good takeaway. I'm buying low on Pryor right now. I'd love to buy low on Pryor. This is a great time to get him. And the other thing that I took away from this game is, what do you know? Jordan Reed's hurt. He's got a fractured big toe. It's probably going to be tough for him to play. He's a tough dude. Like, he's going to try and tough it out, but you can only play with when the inside of your foot doesn't work, you can only play so much. So I would look for Pryor's target share to probably go up even more, and then I also think that Chris Thompson is going to get a bump in some receptions as well. But this game sort of delivered in some ways. How did you feel about Alshon Jeffrey?
I thought it was pretty good. He was covered by Josh Norman a lot, which we said he would be. And that, of course, limits him. But this is going to be a problem that Alshon's going to face every week. He's always going to get the other team's best corner, and he's going to have to beat him at some point.
Right. I don't think he did a bad job. Like I agree with you. I think he had a pretty good showing. I just think that this is going to be somewhat pseudo the Eagles' offense for most of the year. Right. I just think that that's going to be what it is. If he has a definitive number one corner that he can beat, you're probably going to see a decent amount of targets, and you're probably going to see him manhandle some people in the end zone, especially. So I think he has good upside, but this is going to be the way of this offense. They're not just going to feed it to one person, and the person that's most likely to get it in some sort of, intermediate depth is going to be Ertz. So I think that's where it kind of limits Jeffrey, and then obviously his injury history is another thing that limits him. So just be careful playing him. I don't know that I'm going to advise him in DFS too much, but those are definitely my takeaways from this game. The next game that we had on the slate was just the one that we were dreading having to watch. And I'll tell you, watching the whole thing was a rough one. This was the Jets-Bills game, and this one was almost too easy. Like, we didn't even talk about this game all that much because there was really only one good play from this game, and it was LaShawn McCoy. And he got absolutely fed. The only thing that I was a little upset about, but it's something that we can take away for the future, is goal line carries were a bit of a concern for me. Tolbert got too many. Like, if he comes in to spell him, that's okay, but he got almost all the goal line work, and that worries me a little bit. LaShawn obviously still gets enough feeding to still be worthwhile and everything. I'm not telling you not to play him or anything like that, or like his touchdown value is all of a sudden gone. He can score from a long way out, but having that much, him being out that much around the goal line worries me a little bit.
It doesn't worry me at all for the reason that this was the case last year, and it was the case the year before.
Yeah.
And it was the case the year before that. Ever since he's been in Buffalo, basically, whenever they got near the red zone in the goal line, they've given it to the backup running back. And I don't know what the reason for that is. The backup running backs have not been especially good in Buffalo. That's why they keep changing them every year. But Shady still delivered all of those years. Yeah. He'll still deliver this year.
Yeah, I agree too. So moving on to the other horrible game of the week. This was the Rams-Colts.
Ooh-ha.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Rams D. This one was almost a no-brainer as well. The Colts literally have nobody that you want to play on their offense at all in any way whatsoever, and the Rams defense was just to fire it up in all categories.
Bet against the Colts every chance you get until Andrew Luck comes back.
Yeah, I can't say it any better. Bet against the Colts every single time until he comes back. What did you think of the Rams offense? There were a couple of pieces that were somewhat interesting to this. Gurley just kept on with his less than 80 yards total, or rushing at least for sure. He's been like 14 games without 80 yards rushing or something like that. It's some ridiculously high total. If you can't get it done against the Colts, I don't know when you're going to get it done.
He had 2 yards to carry against the Colts. That's pathetic.
Yeah.
He has to be better. Like, he has to do better than that, or else someone is going to replace him by the end of the season. Like that, you cannot get 2 yards to carry in the NFL.
I don't know if anybody's going to replace him by the end of the season.
If he gets 2 yards to carry for the entire season, he will be replaced.
Okay, for the entire season, I think it's highly unlikely that he has two yards to carry for the entire season. But he's clearly the best, most talented back on the team. I think that the line is just really a struggle. I think that they struggle to run block in every sense of the word. Aaron Kromer is a good line coach. We'll see how this line improves over the course of the year. But I do think that they're going to struggle to run the ball for a lot of it, and that does not bode well for Jared Goff when he's playing not Colts. So be careful.
In addition to that, the Redskins when McVay, when he was at the Redskins, just showed no interest in being able to run the ball. He doesn't care.
Yeah, that's true.
This is the guy Alfred Morris was really good running back in the older Mike Shanahan's system, and then McVay got there, and Alfred Morris did nothing for like 3 seasons, and then was gone out the door.
Yeah.
And obviously we knew Alfred Morris can run the ball. He had a 1,500-yard rushing season one year. So it's not that he just doesn't have any interest in running the ball. That's all it is.
Right. Yeah, I think that's
or at least running it successfully, right? I mean, he's going to do it to
right.
protect Goff. But
Yeah. He's going to do it just not to throw his quarterback's arm out, but that's about all he has doing. So that's an interesting scheme, scheme ideology to point out is this is the worst screen team in the entire NFL. Like, they have one of the best screen players, and this is one of the worst screen teams in the entire NFL. Cam just throws with no touch. I'm not saying that he can't throw short, but he throws with no touch at all. It's like, hey, Cam, toss me the ball, and there's a bruise on your chest. Like, he doesn't do it well, and he airs people out. When he does try and put touch on it, he airs it out and almost leaves his running back out to dry. He missed Ed Dixon, like, by 40 yards, and the guy was open by 30 yards. So that was really bad. He missed Kelvin Benjamin when he was wide open. They just couldn't put it together. And on the other side of the ball for the 49ers, they just made like some strange play calls and decisions. And this game was not 26-0. Like, this game should have been so much closer than it actually was. And we've been talking about it all offseason, Joe. Who are the two people in Shanahan's offense that you want to own?
You want the X receiver, Pierre Garçon, had 10 targets, 6 catches for 80 yards. And you want the running back. Carlos Hyde had a really good first half and struggled a bit in the second half when they had to start chucking the ball around. Which
I don't care what anybody says. Hyde had a fantastic day. Hyde had a great day. When they ran the ball, they had huge holes in the first half. They got behind, and the Panthers really started putting the hard on them. And it happens, right? And they made some bad decisions. Hoyer didn't have a lot of time to throw. They did push the ball downfield to Marquise Goodwin pretty well. I feel like this team will get better as the year progresses. They will improve. And the Panthers have a pretty solid defense as well. So I think I would look to these people. I would scoop up all the 49ers you can, either this week or next, because they play the Seahawks this week. They're going to have a rough go of it again. They're not as good as the Seahawks. It's not like they're going to beat them or anything like that. They're going to struggle to move the ball in some ways. But I would scoop them up either this week or after this week, and you can play them with confidence moving forward. Shanahan will get these guys the ball, and they will be productive. So I thought it was just an interesting game. A couple of interesting calls as far as the fourth down conversions were. They had some strange penalties in this game as well that also negated some solid plays from the 49ers. So, but I like this team. They're gonna get better. I think they're gonna improve. Speaking of the Seahawks, the next game was the Seahawks-Packers. This was literally the slow bowl, because we talked about these guys starting slow every single year. Joe, this was one of the most snooze-fest games I've ever watched, and it's not because defense was winning, right? It's because everybody was just running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and they were all just playing backyard football. It was terrible. It was an awful game.
You have the two backyard footballiest quarterbacks in the league playing against each other.
It was like Pete Wheeler and Pablo Sanchez just throwing the ball around in backyard football 2001. It was awful, dude. It was so bad.
Yeah, and the Seahawks offensive line is terrible. Like, the undrafted free agent that they'd been starting got hurt, so they have to start somebody even worse than him now. Their offensive line's terrible. It might get better, so the second half of the season they might come on. They might not. It's hard to predict that. But keep an eye out for them. If you watch the games, and then if the offensive line starts playing better, that's when you know, okay, they're about to get hot.
Right.
This is what happens to Seahawks every year. They start with a terrible offensive line, and then about halfway through the season, Tom Cable fixes it.
Tom Cable just fixes it. Yep, that's exactly what happens.
And then they win 8 games in a row and go to the playoffs and do well.
The other thing that I really want to point out to everybody is I was talking about it, and I even bumped up my prediction when we talked about it on stream last time. The Seahawks backfield, first of all, is a graveyard. Okay, and second of all, Chris Carson is by far the best running back in this backfield. Okay, he played, Joe. I have a quiz for you. How many snaps did Eddie Lacy play?
I didn't count. I'm gonna guess 7.
He nailed 7. That's exactly how many. He played 7 snaps, and over under 25. How many did Chris Carson play?
I mean, just because you're putting it at 25, which I would normally say under, but I'm gonna guess it's over because
26 snaps for Chris Carson. That's
some ridiculous
that's
number.
absolutely retarded that the guy that you signed and gave fat bonuses to is getting played way less than the guy who's a rookie. I told everybody that Chris Carson was going to be the guy at some point. I predicted week 4. Last weekend I moved it up. I said get him now, and it's a good thing that you got him now because he was the only running back worth anything. If you play All right, this is a public service announcement to all the Fantasy Elite viewership. If you ask me whether you should play Eddie Lacy ever again for the rest of your natural born life, you don't get an answer. You don't get an answer at all. Don't ever play the guy. He's absolutely worthless no matter what team he goes to. A team could not have a running back, and they should not use Eddie Lacy. Like, he's that bad, and everyone else in that offense is just better. Rawls comes back this week, but I'm telling you, Chris Carson is probably still the best guy, and he'll probably still get the most touches overall, and he certainly will play the most snaps, I would assume. He picked up blitzes pretty well, and he just ran the ball amongst a horrible, horrible line, but he's by far the best guy. So get him, pick him up moving forward. He's the best guy by far. That game was really tough to watch, though, in many, many ways.
Yeah. Let's get on to the Giants-Cowboys game.
Yikes. Oh, even better. Woohoo.
The Giants' offense is doo-doo if Odell Beckham isn't there.
Terrible.
Their running game is doo-doo regardless. Don't ever... in the same way that you should never play Eddie Lacy, you should never play a Giants running back.
Never. I told everybody before the season started, don't draft one of those guys. I literally had them in a do not draft tier in and of themselves. It was Giants running backs. I didn't even name guys because it doesn't matter who's back there. Ben McAdoo is terrible at calling plays. He's awful. Like, just like you should trust the Cooter, trust anything that McAdoo does not do. Don't trust anything that he does. He's terrible. All of their running backs will cap out at like 400 rushing yards for the entire season. They're garbage. Don't do it.
Yeah, so Giants running game is bad. Giants offense in general is bad without Odell Beckham, and their offensive line has to do better. Cowboys don't even have a real pass rush, and they were putting Eli in trouble. Yeah. So hopefully Odell will be back soon, and hopefully that will just clear out everything for the offense. Then Brandon Marshall will get single coverage, and maybe he'll do better. But until you see Odell back playing and healthy, stay away from the Giants.
Yep. On the other side of the ball, I thought this was pretty interesting. This is the third game in a row that Dez Bryant has been shut down by Janoris Jenkins.
Yeah, I mean, Dez is a big physical receiver, right? He's not fast. He's not going to beat you with speed. I mean, he's not slow, but he's not going to beat you with speed down the field. He's a big physical guy. He's gonna try to outmuscle you, and George Jenkins is the right kind of corner to deal with that.
Plus, the Giants' defense is just no joke. I think they're good. Now, the Cowboys handled them, but when one side of the football is doing absolutely nothing, it's pretty easy to win the other side of the football game. Like, it's much easier to win the other side of the football game. And they still have a good run game. Like, Zeke is a very talented player, and Dak doesn't turn the ball over. He's a great type of player for when the other offense is just dookie because he doesn't turn the ball over. So I thought that they played a pretty clean game. I was pretty impressed with the Cowboys more than anybody this week. I thought the Giants were going to win that game, but then again, I also thought that their offense was going to be any sort of have any sort of competence level whatsoever, but they are just trash.
Terrible. Okay, last 2 games, Monday night games, Saints Vikings. Let's not talk too long about this, but Saints backfield, as we expected, it's even worse than we expected. It's a mess. The Saints lost another offensive lineman in this game, so their offensive line, while it's not a mess, it's not great anymore. Stay away from that backfield.
Joe, I'm going to play another game with you. I know you like games. So, which running back had the most snaps for the Saints?
So, out of the options of Mark Ingram, last year, 1,000 yards, Pro Bowler, Adrian Peterson, one of the best running backs of all time, and Alvin Kamara, a rookie. John Gruden said it on TV. Alvin Kamara is the best running back on this team.
He is. And we talked about that before. But just because somebody's the best running back doesn't always mean that they wind up getting the playing time. And especially with Sean Payton, he's notorious for doing this kind of bullshit trio, ring around the rosy type of thing. And he's not just going to let rookies run out there and just go hog wild. But Alvin Kamara was the guy who had the most snaps in this game. Now, they were behind, granted. So that game flow, and he's by far the best pass catcher. So understand that that's partly a game flow thing, but he played 31 snaps to Mark Ingram's 26 to Adrian Peterson's 9.
Yeah, I mean,
And
stay away from Adrian Peterson for sure.
Yeah, and the carry share.
So this snap count is not going to be consistent from week to week.
It's
going to be game flow dependent, and it's going to be Sean Payton's mood dependent, right? We've seen Sean get mad at people for basically no reason and just bench them.
Yep.
So it's going to be frustrating if you own any of those guys. That's why I don't own any of them, and why I kind of try to stay away from them, is because it's just really unpredictable what that backfield is going to do. I try to stay away from it.
This was the reason that we talked to people about not drafting people like Adrian Peterson before Mark Ingram, because he played 9 snaps and got the same amount. Like they got 7 carries, 6 carries, 6 carries. So unless you think that you're bipolar with the same disorder that Sean Payton has, and you think that you could predict it, stay away from the backfield. Like it's bad news. We told you not to do it, and if you did do any of them, Mark Ingram probably makes the most sense, and he was the most productive back in that sense in this game. He had like 50 receiving yards or something like that, and some more up the middle. So he was the most productive back. He's definitely still the starter. He will get the most touches by year's end unless there's injury concerns. But just stay away from this backfield. It's really, really rough. That said, the Vikings D is legit. We knew that before the year started. They're extremely adaptable, and just the way that they get pressure with 4 down linemen is really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, as everybody knows, the Saints is one of the better offenses in the league for the last 10 years plus. And the Saints didn't get a touchdown until garbage time against this Vikings defense. That's all you need to know.
And the only time that they really drove the ball downfield, we talked about this a bit before draft time too. Fleener looked really good, and he ran the seam with confidence and caught the ball well. If he keeps that up, the Saints will be able to move the ball better, but I don't want any part of them really until Snead gets back and that line gets back into healthy mode. And I think that that's after their bye, probably sometime around week 5. I mean, if you have Breeze, obviously fire him up. Thomas is probably going to be good, but even he'll be shut down and shadowed by good receivers for the entire couple of weeks. So I'd be worried about the Saints until at least week 5 or so. On the other side of the ball, it was a no-brainer. Stephon Diggs, we talked about, he got shadowed by one of the worst cornerbacks in the league ever, probably, and he just lit him up. I mean, and Thielen was covered by an inexperienced slot guy. I mean, it was a bad day for the Saints all over. I think the Minnesota operated their game plan very well.
Yeah, they knew who the Saints are, and they took advantage of it. They did things that were totally uncharacteristic of the Vikings, which is that they usually check the ball down a lot, don't throw a lot of long passes, and they did long passes to wide open people, but they threw a lot of long passes. And, I don't know, in the same way that I don't know what to take away from the Rams offense from the Colts game, I don't know what to take away from the Vikings offense from this game. Dalvin Cook's good. You can roll him. Stephon Diggs is good, and Thielen is good. But Sam Bradford's not going to do this every week, I don't think. He's not all of a sudden going to become a deep ball passer, I don't think. This is a result of the Vikings playing a JV defense.
Yeah, I can tell you what this is. This is a sell high. Like, I sell, ding, 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 sell as many Vikings as you can. I would say probably not name Dalvin Cook. I'd keep Dalvin, but I would sell all the other ones. Like, if you can upgrade Stephon Diggs to if somebody's like willing to offer you Stephon Diggs for some guy that was drafted in the first couple of rounds, like a Doug Baldwin or something like that, sell that shit. Sell it immediately. If you upgrade Adam Thielen to Michael Crabtree, like sell. Please sell everything that you can if you get upgrades, at the position. That's what I would say. And I would say the same thing for the Rams game as well. I don't think as many people are going to be willing to offer you as much for the Rams because they've been historically bad. But this is another one. Like, Sam Bradford is not all of a sudden going to become anything better than the 18th best quarterback in fantasy. He's just not going to do it. It won't happen. He never has been. He never will. Just don't expect that to happen. He played against a literally non-existent defense last night. On to the next.
Yeah. All right, last game of the week, Chargers-Broncos. It was pretty late for a lot of people. Hopefully you stayed up to watch as Chargers came roaring back at the end. Couldn't quite seal the deal. But Melvin Gordon looked really good. The Broncos secondary looked really good. Trevor Siemian looked good enough, but he's going to leave points on the board.
I did not like the way that Siemian looked last night. I thought that game could have gone significantly worse. They had a dropped pick 6. That was an easy pick 6. They had another dropped interception later on in the game, and they got away with one that I thought should have been a fumble that they called a forward pass. The Chargers bring the heat. I thought that the Broncos running game was decent enough. It was really good to see that only CJ Anderson and Jamal Charles got the game at all at running back. And the split was good. I think they played like 30 some odd plays for Anderson and 10 plays for Charles or something like that. It was a pretty solid split. And Anderson played better than I thought he was going to. So that was pretty good looking. I think these are two pretty good football teams. That's what I took away from this contest more than anything else. And also that the Broncos can be run on. They really can. Like, you can run on this team. Ezekiel Elliott is going to be a great DFS play for this coming week. He's nowhere near as expensive as some of the other guys, and the Broncos really can be run on. But, man, that secondary is, yikes. They are really tough.
Don't play your receiver. I mean, Keenan Allen saves his day by getting a touchdown, but he only had 30 yards. He had a lot of targets. He's going to be good the rest of the way.
He's going to be really good the rest of the way.
But if you're, like... I don't normally advocate benching your studs, and maybe you still shouldn't, but, like, man, be afraid of the Broncos secondary. If you have a wide receiver 2 or a flex guy that you usually play, don't play him against the Broncos secondary. Yeah,
for sure. I want to bring up one more thing, and this is another interesting snap count thing before we move on to the rest of the stuff that we have planned for you guys. The Chargers only played 3 receivers. 3 total. Not a fourth receiver did not see the field not one time. Keenan Allen played, Tyrell Williams played, and Travis Benjamin played. If you need to pick somebody up and play them and expect to get not 0, that's a great place to go when only 3 receivers are seeing the field at all. Right? Look for those kind of snap counts for people that are not, you don't want to see a team that's rolling out 6 or 7 people on the field and all over the place and this and that. Their sets are pretty determinable, and you can tell that they play these guys the most. So that's a pretty good place to turn if you're looking for somebody. I know Travis Benjamin's available on a lot of waiver wires. So with waiver wires being brought into, that's a great segue. Let's talk about the guys that need to be picked up this week, and let's talk about the guys that maybe should be left on the waiver wire this week, Joe. The biggest surprise to anybody, which we talked about it a little bit because he was a talented, he was a talented backup, and we talked about Jeremy Langford a bit, but Tariq Cohen came out of nowhere to a lot of people to burning it up this week. We've mentioned a lot about how it was game flow dependent. Is he your number 1 ad this week, Joe?
It's the first week, and we generally have a long-standing policy about this, which is like there isn't really a number 1 ad unless there's a major injury. Mm-hmm. In the sense of you drafted people because you think they're good. Unless they got hurt this week, probably nothing changed. Nothing should have changed.
Right.
That being said, Tariq Cohen should be owned. He proved that he should 100%. Be owned.
That's for sure. That's a great way to put it.
He will be a bit game flow dependent. He's not going to give him the ball 15 carries a game. He's never going to usurp Jordan Howard's role as the lead dog. Jordan Howard's going to get the red zone carries. Jordan Howard's going to get the between the tackles carries. But I think he did earn himself, 8 to 10 touches a game, some out of the backfield, or some handoffs and some catches. And so he's going to be a useful player. He's going to be a useful flex player. And especially if they get behind, which they might in some games. They're not a terrific team. They might get behind. I think that in the fourth quarter, Howard will come out and he'll go in if they need to chuck the ball around.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to say it. Like, I honestly couldn't add anything that would make that any better. I think that's a perfect way to say it. He's game flow dependent. 10 touches probably max. You need to be careful. If they start feeding him the ball more, he's probably going to get hurt. He's just a small guy. So I think this is also, if you can go out to the Jordan Howard owner, right? If you can go out to the Jordan Howard owner and you can find a way to acquire that guy for a decent price that's not a first or second round payment, I would do it. I'd be willing. I'd gobble up all of the Jordan Howard this week, right? I'm numbing on all the Jordan Howard this week, and especially if you think that if you're one of the David Johnson owners that got burned by David Johnson, approach the Jordan Howard owner, see what you can maybe get for him, and see if he's freaking out about the Bears backfield. With that being said, this is going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say it because I really believe in the guy. I think Chris Carson is the number 1 ad this week because he has the potential, at least if you have any semblance of a strong team, I think that Chris Carson is the number 1 ad this week, strictly for the fact that he has the biggest chance to be a starting fantasy back at some point throughout the fantasy year, right? And to get that guy and be able to stash him at this point in the season is very, very positive. So Tariq Cohen, if you need instant points, I totally understand why you would add him. He's a good flex play. I think he's got some worth going forward, especially because the Bears don't throw to their wide receivers. It's really strange. Kenny Golladay is not a bad speculative ad by any means. Just don't insert him into your lineup. Please, guys, pump the brakes on that one. I can understand why people are adding Kerwin Williams. I don't think that that's the guy in the Arizona backfield that's going to wind up toting the rock moving forward. DJ Foster is a better player who they signed from the Patriots practice squad. I personally think he's a better player. I don't know if he's going to get a bunch of the touches moving forward immediately, and I think that Andre Ellington is going to wind up getting hurt, and he's primarily a receiving back. I think that Chris Johnson, that they re-signed, who I said that they were going to re-sign, either him or D'Angelo Williams, I assume they were going to get one of those guys just to have a veteran in the backfield. I think that he's going to wind up being the most productive player coming out of that fantasy backfield moving forward. Who would you take if you had to pick one guy?
I did have to do this, and I took Chris Johnson in my leagues. And the reason is that if it ends up being Andre Ellington and Kerwin Williams splitting it, I don't want to be a part of it anyway, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, the Cardinals' offense isn't going to be that good without David Johnson, and they're not going to be good enough at running or receiving out of the backfield to interest me. But Chris Johnson has a chance to take both of their jobs.
Right.
And so if it works, then that's great. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't cost me anything. So I'm happy to pick him up and stash him. I'm not playing him this week. But I'm happy to pick him up and stash him and see what happens this week and next week. And then maybe in the second half of the season or after week 4 or 5, if he starts to emerge as the guy, then I'm looking to play him.
Right. This is the same strategy that we were talking about, Joe, when Julian Edelman went down. Do you remember this? And we were talking about who was going to replace him. You and I had a long discussion about this, and it was all about finding the guy who best replaces the exact position and what that person does best, right, ahead of them in the depth chart. And when we came to the final deliberation, we decided that, I think the way that you put it is that Danny Amendola has a 30% chance or a 35% chance to take basically everything that Julian Edelman was doing as best as anyone could, or he has, a third to be in the mix and then a third to do nothing at all, right? I'm willing to take that chance over anybody else that they had because he's the best available option. And what do you know? The first week, what did he have? 6 catches, 100 yards, something like that? That's an
100 yards in the first half before he got concussed.
Right, and then he got concussed. So that's exactly what was going to happen. So it's like you have to try and predict who is going to be the best person to replace these kind of people. And it's just that Chris Johnson, like you said, has a chance to replace a job that could be done by 2 people or just him. And I'll tell you, in the preseason, he looked like he still had it to me.
Yeah, I mean, he got cut because you don't keep a veteran back
who doesn't play special teams.
Gonna play and doesn't play special teams.
Yeah, exactly.
Same reason D'Angelo is not on the Steelers this year.
Right.
The Steelers will be the exact same situation. If Le'Veon Bell gets hurt for an extended period of time, if it's one game, it'll be James Conner.
Right.
If it's like 4 games or more, they're going to call D'Angelo. He's going to come in. James Conner is still going to be the number 2 running back, and D'Angelo is going to take the job.
That's exactly right. D'Angelo probably still has his condo in Pittsburgh or wherever he was living out of. He should, right? Because that's the kind of way that this happens. So be keen on that, guys. Be a step ahead. Don't be a step behind. Add the right people. Don't get caught up in the hype. I'm not telling you not to add people who score a lot of points. I'm not telling you anything like that, but just use your mind when you're actually adding people. And if you have a question, ask us. That's why we're here. Get in the Discord, hit us up on Twitter, get us on Facebook, get in touch with us some way. Hell, email us. I don't care. I'll get back to you. Find a way to get in touch with us to ask, just throw out an opinion. And that's because people are going to go out and add Kerwin Williams, and then 4 games later, they're going to be like, oh, why didn't he do anything? It's because he's not the guy. Like, he's not going to be a good ad for you. So be careful. Only add him if you really need him in dire straits. Joe, can you think of anybody this week that's particularly like people are going to go out and pick up, and it's just going to be a terrible ad?
I don't know about that. I can tell you that one guy that a lot of people are going to go out and drop, and it's probably going to be a bad drop, and that's Hunter Henry.
Yeah,
the guy didn't get targeted in that game, which is really weird. It's really weird. But as you mentioned, the Chargers are only playing with 3 receivers. Antonio Gates is as old as they come in the NFL. The guy's not going to make it through a full season. And not only that, but the Chargers coaches know that. They're not going to play him 50 snaps a game. So Hunter Henry is going to get more going to get more targets. He's going to get more snaps, and it's going to be better, especially once Antonio gets his first touchdown and breaks that damn record.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to tell you the two people that I think people are going to add this week, and I'm going to say that one is seems foolish but is good, and then the other is probably not so good. People are going to add Nelson Agholor this week, and then people are going to add Benny Fowler this week. Those are probably the two that are going to get added this week. I'm telling you, Benny Fowler, if this is why you cannot look at a box score, Benny Fowler, both of his touchdowns were botched plays. Both of them. One was a defensive offsides. They snapped it. The Chargers weren't ready. Trevor Siemian made a great throw on the run. It was like a great play. It was a nice play. But Benny Fowler scored completely out of happenstance. And then the other one was just a BS play that should have been scored 2 plays earlier on 2 different. One was a run and one was a throw. He got lucky. It just happens, right? So
Benny Fowler from a couple years back when he had 5 touchdowns in the first 3 games and didn't score again the rest of the season. That's Benny Fowler.
Right. He had 3 targets or 3 catches, 2 touchdowns, 23 yards. Right. Don't add that guy. He's worse than Kenny Golladay. Please add Kenny Golladay before you add Benny Fowler. Okay. And then Agholor is going to be added. He plays the slot mostly for the receivers. He has some value. Right. He likely won't get you a 0, but what you guys need to understand with Nelson Agholor, this is another, you need to watch the game or listen to us because we do. They had a lot of Mickey Mouse plays to get the ball into his hands, and he's still not a good receiver, and he struggles to catch. He scored on a BS play, and a bunch of the other ways that he got the ball in his hands were like end arounds or like really bad screens and stuff like that. So be careful adding that guy. Don't just plug him into your lineup and be like, oh, he's the next good Eagles receiver. That's not the case. He sucks a lot. So just be careful adding him.
So before we move on to the games for this week, which we'll go through in a kind of rapid fire way, I just want to mention, when we say that people like score on BS plays or something, we're not like mad about that. We're not saying that like they're bad players because they score on BS plays. That's wonderful that they did that.
Great.
It's just not something that's going to happen consistently. It's not something that we can predict. It's not something that you can predict, and so we're not going to try to rely upon players who do that.
Yeah, you're right. I think I should clarify. I throw around strong words like I hate this guy and that's bullshit and all that. I don't care so much about. I'm sure they're great guys. I hate the idea of Danny Woodhead, right? I hate the idea of Eddie Lacy, right? Like it's just the kind of player that they are for fantasy purposes that I am not on board with. Right. I'm going to be unapologetic in telling you things because that's the way to make people understand that this is how it is in the fantasy NFL. And if you want to win, this is how you have to play. If you want to be a fan and root for your team, that's great. But if you want to win in fantasy, which is what we're trying to help people do, and you want to build your bankroll in DFS, I'm going to be harsh and tell you when you do stupid things or when this thing is dumb or when somebody scores on a BS play. So be it, they did it, but don't expect that to happen moving forward, and you can't game plan for that kind of stuff. So that's a very good addendum, Joe. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, so moving along to week 2, tomorrow's game is going to be a real stinker. Not only is it a Thursday game, but the Texans are playing the Bengals. Who, if anyone, are you playing in this game?
Defenses. I'm playing defense. That's all I'm playing in this game. They both are sort of trash. The Bengals more so than the Texans. I'll still play Hopkins if I have him in season long. I'll still play Miller if I have him in season long. There's no tight end there to play. I'm just going to play AJ Green if I have him in season long. Every single other person, maybe sans kickers, I'm sitting.
Guys, the Texans are starting a rookie quarterback for his first ever game on a short week, and their offense was just terrible. And he has a hurt ankle.
Right.
And he's a running quarterback with a hurt ankle. So
and that's the better offense of the two. That's the better offense of the two.
Just be afraid of this game. Play the defenses. Don't play anyone else unless you have to. Thursday games are always ugly. This won't be an exception. Like as Mike said, play your studs if you drafted them to be studs, but DFS stay away.
Yep.
First game Sunday that I've got, Bills at Panthers. This will be an interesting game. It's McDermott going back to his old team. Who's your favorite player in this game?
My favorite player in this game, yikes. I have to stick with, you can go one of two ways here. I would go Shady just particularly because of the volume and it's really hard to get away from that volume. The Panthers front seven is a really good front seven. The person who could beat them a little bit is Jordan Matthews. That could be an interesting play. Because the Panthers secondary is not too great. But I'm sitting the Panthers this week again, like especially not the running backs, the wide receivers specifically. Cam just does not look good enough to me to push the ball downfield in an effective way and accurately. And I might even sit him in season long this week. Like if I have a decent option other than Kelvin Benjamin, I'm sitting him this week. I don't know if I'd sit Olsen. I probably would sit Olsen too. Like unless I have a bad option, I'm probably sitting those guys. I don't like the way that he looks.
Yeah, guy I like in this game that's I think is undervalued in DFS especially is Jonathan Stewart. Look, he's still really the starting running back. Like McCaffrey plays a lot of plays and they play on the field together, not infrequently.
Oh, a bunch. They played a bunch.
Yeah, Jonathan Stewart's still the main running back. He's the runner. He's going to score the touchdowns in the red zone. He's going to get the short yardage carries. He's going to end up with more carries. He might end up with less touches or a similar number of touches.
Right.
But I think he's less explosive, but he's so undervalued right now. Take advantage of that. Bears Bucks. This is an interesting game. One of the two interesting games to me, in the sense that how are the Bucks going to respond to having such a wacky last 10 days?
Yeah, this has been a tough last 10 days on the Bucks and the Dolphins, which we're going to talk about later. With the Bears defense being better than people think that they are, I'm probably going to fire them up this week. Jameis Winston is pretty turnover prone. As a matter of fact, both of the teams that are coming off of not playing in the past 10 days and having all kind of weird schedules, both of their quarterbacks just love to turn the ball over. So those defenses are something that you can key on to try and play, especially in DFS where the Chargers, I believe, are middle of the pack, like $3,100 maybe, and then the Bears are almost like nothing at $2,300. So I would look to fire those guys up. Who else are you looking to play in that game from either side of the ball?
Well, the Bucks tight ends, I'm afraid because there's two of them, but we just saw the Bears blow all kinds of coverages against Austin Hooper. I have to imagine the Bucks are going to try to take advantage of that. So if you want a speculative play in DFS, one of the Bucks tight ends is a reasonable thing to do. They'll be super cheap.
We know which one it is. It's just that rookie tight ends just don't do a whole lot. Evan Ingram even is getting a lot of playing time right now, and he's an anomaly. OJ Howard is a phenomenal player, guys. He's going to be a really good pro, okay? But Cameron Brate is the pass catcher. Yeah, not this year. Cameron Brate is the pass catcher. He's $3,400 on DraftKings. Fire that dude up with absolute certainty that he will get something done and not zero you this week. He's a good play this week.
Yeah. So I think that's my value play. Obviously, play Mike Evans. The Bears actually shut down Julio last week, but play Mike Evans in your draft leagues and things like that.
Joe, did the Bears shut down Julio, or did Matt Ryan and the Falcons shut down Julio?
Yeah, the Falcons offense shut him down. Nobody shuts down Julio ever.
Right.
Viking Steelers, home Ben. So play your Steelers, all of them. Play them. Home Ben, play them. Ben's going to be great. The Vikings' defense is really, really good. This might be Ben's worst home game of the season, but Ben's worst home game of the season is far better than Ben's best away game of the season, right? Ben's a top 10 quarterback, even against this really great Vikings defense.
Bad home Ben is still really freaking good. Bad home Ben is still really good. And good road Ben is still really freaking bad. Like, that's just how he is. I don't know if they cheat at home and just flub it away. Like, at least be less egregious with it, Like, they're being so obvious. I think Martavis Bryant just poops on this Vikings defense. Trey Waynes got beat deep, like, several times against the Saints, and the Saints had no time to throw. Ben will move his cinder block feet, and Martavis Bryant is fast and really big. I think he's just going to beat him. Like, Xavier Rhodes is going to shadow Antonio Brown the whole day. It's not to say that Brown won't do well, because he's just unbelievable. But Trey Waynes is not a guy that I want covering my big fast receiver when Ben Roethlisberger loves to chuck the ball long. I think this is another sit Le'Veon Bell week. I'm going to call it. This isn't something that I would say often, and I don't think it's like, oh, sit your studs against matchups. I just think he takes one more week to burn the rust off, to get everything going, and to get his reps nice and crisp. I just think that it's going to take one more week. I'm probably going to sit him, especially in DFS. I'm not going to sit him in season long, but in DFS, I'm going to sit him one more week. I'm not going to pay up for him this week.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay for him this week in DFS. Play him in season long.
Yeah, for sure.
They're going to score lots of touchdowns. Le'Veon's going to get one of them. That being said, it's going to be a high-scoring game. Don't be afraid of the Vikings in this game. If the Steelers if Home Ben plays well like we think he will, Steelers are going to score some points. Vikings are going to have to score too.
Yeah, I like Dalvin Cook in this game a lot too.
Yeah. So next game is Cardinals at the Colts. For trash talking the Cardinals earlier, we think we have good reason to do that. Carson is old and washed up. The Colts are a JV, high school level, college level defense. Don't be afraid to play the Cardinals this week. Larry should be good. John Brown's a good DFS play. He's cheap. He had 9 targets last week. A bunch of them came after DJ went out.
Which is how it should be moving forward, we assume.
Right. That's how we expect it to be this week. DJ's not playing, so we expect John Brown to continue to get targets. All he needs to do is catch one of them, and he's going to make your day for you.
Yep.
Because, as we mentioned earlier, the only route that guy can run is run straight fast. So he's a good play. Stay away from the Colts. This Cardinals defense is too good, and the Colts are too bad.
Yep. That's about that. Don't play anyone from the Colts. Please play no one from the Colts.
Next one is going to be, it's my favorite game of the week every week is the same. But this one, the Patriots are playing the Saints. This is my favorite fantasy game of the week, too. What do you think about this one?
It's not my favorite fantasy game of the week, but it's got to be a close second. Just like there were no players I wanted to play last week because it was just a tough week matchup-wise. There are too many players that I want to play this week, and it's actually one of the tougher. I'm not going to lie. This is probably one of the harder DFS weeks overall that I've ever seen in my DFS career, just because I think people are overpriced. I think people are priced a bit too high from where they should be. Maybe even the algorithms are having an overreaction Tuesday kind of thing. But I think that this is one of the better games of the week. I'm firing up every single Patriot that I can in season long, including James White. But I think in DFS, I'm going to pay for a particular set of players. And I think that they're going to score from far away because I don't think that the Saints have anyone to guard Brandon Cooks. And then I think that James White is going to chew up a lot of yards underneath. I think those are the 2 players that you're probably looking to play. But I wouldn't sit anybody. I mean, Brady's obviously going to tear it up. You want the guy who's orchestrating, who's conducting the orchestra. So it's great to have Brady in this one. I think Gronk obviously bounces back, but the 2 guys that I really want are an uncoverable Cooks for the Saints defense and a James White who's going to tear it up underneath. I think Kenny Vaccaro, I think you're maybe selling it a bit short. Kenny Vaccaro is not bad at covering big tight ends. He's physical. He likes to play that kind of style. I don't think he's going to stop Gronk by any means, but I think he's I think that's one of the bright spots in this game is that they potentially will have so many other places to go that Gronk may not kill him.
Kenny is small. Gronk is big. Ravens Brown. Oh, there was one other guy in DFS that you were pretty interested in this week on the Saints side.
Alvin Kamara is not a bad play if you need a punt. He's not a bad play. They're going to be behind the entire game, and he's going to get a lot of snaps again. I'm not saying this is not to start a trend or anything, but they're going to be behind. This is going to be a really, really Patriots off of a loss are going to try and make an example of somebody. They're going to be behind a lot, and he gives them the best option out of the backfield. Kamara he's $3,500. All he needs to return value is 7 points. If he gets anything above 12 to 15, you really made hay with $3,500. So keep that in mind if you need a punt at the running back with a flex position.
You also think that the one other thing with this game, the Pats every week the Pats do this, right? You can always look at whoever the Pats are playing, take the person that makes their offense go. That's the guy that the Pats are going to focus on. Yep. This week, that's Mike Thomas.
Yep.
If you have him in standard leagues or season-long leagues, play him. DFS, stay away. Pats are going to double team every time.
Stay away.
Browns, Ravens. Play the Ravens defense.
Yes.
They're expensive in DFS. But they're the number 1 defense this week, probably, or number 2.
Yeah, probably the number 1. I would say the number 1.
Again, I think that this is another week. Last week you saw the Ravens run the ball 70% of the time. Joe Flacco's coming off. He didn't play in the preseason. He's still working out the kinks. He's got new receivers. The Ravens want to win this game. They want to protect Flacco. Let him get another week getting healthy. They're going to run the ball 50 times again. If they can, right? If they stay ahead on the Browns, they just want to win this game and get out of there. They're going to run the ball as much as they can.
Yeah, the only person that I'm betting on, and this isn't because I hate Jeremy Maclin. Everybody's asked me like, "Oh, why are you so low on Jeremy Maclin?" That's not really what it is. I just continue to think that Mike Wallace has the best rapport with Flacco, and he really likes going long. So I'm betting on Flacco again this week. I really am, because the weakest part of the Browns' defense is their secondary. So I want the go long guy again, and I'm probably going to bet on Mike Wallace. I'm betting on Mike Wallace and Marquise Goodwin again this week, and I'm just going to keep. It's going to hit. Like they target those guys in an average depth of target that's really high, 20 plus yards for sure. I want both of those guys. I'm going to bet on them again. I would probably try and stray away from people like the Cleveland backfield in DFS, because I think the Ravens front is so solid.
I'm very afraid of the Browns offense in this, not for the whole season, but in this game, I'm afraid of them. The Ravens defense is good at every level.
Yeah.
Eagles Chiefs should be a fun one, I think.
I think this is going to be a very interesting game. Fire up Ertz again because Eric Berry's out. That was a guy that could cover Ertz. No one now can cover Ertz. Alshon Jeffrey is going to draw Marcus Peters again, another good corner this week. I would be afraid of him somewhat again. But instead of Aguilar, I'm probably looking more towards Torrey Smith this week, maybe. What about you?
I think Aguilar's got a good chance. Danny Amendola was tearing up the Chiefs in the first half.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with Brady and his connection. He has a special connection with Brady in not the same way, but almost as good of a way as Edelman does. But he was tearing up the Chiefs. I think Aguilar has a chance. He's not as good as Amendola, which is kind of sad. But this Chiefs defense is really good. The slot is one of the few places that you can beat them. I hope that the Eagles would target that. Yeah, I don't think that Aguilar's a great DFS play, but
I think Ertz makes out better off on the them struggling in the slot and not having Eric Berry really than anyone else. So I would fire up that. I don't know that I'm like super excited to fire up Carson Wentz this week because the Chiefs defense is good. But on the other side of the ball in DFS, fade Kareem Hunt. Please do not buy into like the week after week. He's just going to do it again. He's the best running back in the NFL or something. This Philly front seven is no joke, dude. They are good. But I am firing up Tyreek Hill all over the place. I want him in tournament play all over. I'll probably even play him in cash games this week because the Philly defense does not have anyone that can stop Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I agree. Kareem Hunt will be really good. Start him in season longs
for sure.
This is a tough matchup as far as DFS goes, and his price went way up.
Way up. The other thing is that Malcolm Jenkins is a pretty good safety. Don't sit him in season long, but Kelsey might have another somewhat quiet week. Be careful of that. They're probably going to try and get the ball in his hands. He'll probably have 8 or 9 targets, but be careful. This might not be a great Kelsey week.
Titans Jags. Jags defense look good. How do you feel about the Titans offense in this one?
I feel like the Jags defense is way better than people give them credit for. Forget that people are picking up in fantasy because they got 26, 29 points, however many they scored in your league. I think the Jags defense, they got so much pressure. Dude, Ramsey and Boye are a legit shutdown tandem. Like, they are really, really good. I think this Jags defense is pretty freaking solid, and I actually think that they just do the smart thing. They play defense, they run the ball, they don't put Bortles in any more situation to pass the ball than he absolutely have to. He's 4,400 on DraftKings this week. I'm not advocating that you play him. I'm just bringing it up that he's $4,400, and if you need to play a quarterback that's really cheap, he probably won't do horrible things to get you in the negatives this week. It may be one of those weeks. The Titans defense is really struggling in the secondary. Like, they do not have a top guy. They just aren't good at covering anyone at all, as we saw last week. They couldn't even cover Jared Cook. Like, they are really, really struggling in the secondary. This may be the only week that I advocate playing him ever. He's $4,400. The Titans offense, I think that they're going to struggle again, and I don't think that Mariota is going to have as much time as he did last week. I'd be worried about them this week. Maybe Delaney Walker's the only guy I would play. That's probably it.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about the Titans offense. I'm going to have to disagree with you. I'm going to go on the record and say that you should never, under any circumstances, play Blake Bortles.
I agree with that. I'm telling people, if you need a $4,400 play, he's out there. That's all.
If you need a $4,400 play and feel like losing money, you can play Blake Bortles. Jets are playing at the Raiders. Betting against the Jets' offense is always a good decision. What do you think's going to happen on the Raiders side of this one? Do you think they're going to run the ball out, they get up big, or do you think they're going to chuck it around?
I don't think you ever stop Derek Carr from chucking the ball around. They just don't. And I really do think that they don't want to run Lynch that much. So Carr is my play in this game more than anything else, because Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington both catch passes out of the backfield, and I think that they just want to spare Lynch as much as possible. I think it's very possible that if they get up by 20 points or whatever, Lynch just comes out of the game. Not because they don't want him to play and they don't think that he can pound the rock, just because they don't want him to get hurt. You may see him close out some of the game, but he's not going to play as many snaps as people were hoping for, drafting him in the 3rd and 4th round. So I'm not playing Lynch in this one, although I think he could have a stellar day. I'm just not playing him from a game flow perspective that I just believe he won't play, and it's another Cooper week. Fire up Cooper.
So, anybody from the Jets?
If you need to play, I'll play Bilal Powell this week.
Think they're gonna get behind and check it down to him?
Yep. You called this big time before the season started that Matt Forte would start the year and Bilal Powell would be a great trade target, and you could not have been more correct. Bilal Powell is the best player on that entire team, though. I know that's not saying much, but he's the best player on that team, and they are gonna get the ball in his hands more. They have to. It's the only way that they'll even have any chance of getting anywhere close to putting up points. So I would play Powell, but I'm not playing him in cash games and stuff like that. I'll play Powell if I need a flex play, and I'll play him in tournament if I need a play that he fits the bill for.
Yeah, so the second of the 2 Hurricane games, Dolphins at the Chargers. Dolphins half of them have been in California for the last week. The other half been scattered. They just got in Tuesday night, I think, to California to start their week of practice. So they might be a little discombobulated. It's Jay Cutler's first game since getting off his couch. And it's going to be an interesting one, I think. I think that he's going to end up locking on to Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker will probably be covered a good chunk of the time by Verrett, the Chargers' best corner. He's really good.
I have to imagine.
I still think Parker's worth a look. Jay loves chucking the ball deep. He loves chucking the ball deep into coverage. He's not going to be afraid of Verrett. All Parker's got to do is catch 1 or 2 of those deep ones, and he'll make your day. And I think he's going to get about 10 targets.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think more than anything, the only reason that I would consider fading Parker is because a lot of people will be on him because it's his first week playing, and they're excited. So I think that he's going to be owned, not super highly, but I think he'll be owned a pretty decent amount this week. If you're trying to go contrarian, that's something to consider. But other than that, I would fire him up. Like you said, Jay's never seen a 6'3" guy in triple coverage that he didn't like. So he's going to throw the ball to him, and I think that he's by far their best option to try and get some points in this game. I think that they're going to be really discombobulated as well. I would fire up the Chargers defense. Even if they give up some points, there's a pretty good chance that they have 2-3 picks, maybe a fumble. I just think it's going to be a tough week. I hate to pick on guys that are displaced by hurricanes and their families are getting ravaged. Go donate to some charity for it, but play them in fantasy, make your money back.
Win money betting against them and donate it to the charity.
That's exactly right. Win money. You can't make anybody's life better by losing money, because then you don't have it to give. Win some money, donate it to charity. As far as the Cowboys-Broncos game goes, the only person that I want to play in this game really at all because of their price is Zeke Elliott. He's $7,800, and the Broncos can be run all over. I'm sitting all of the Cowboys receivers. You could play Witten if you have him. Obviously, you could play anybody from the Broncos if you have him and stuff like that. But the only person that I want in DFS is Zeke. What about you?
Yeah, Zeke is my number one running back, and my number one running back across the board this week. If I'm ranking running backs, he's my number one guy, and it's not even really close for me. DJ's out as far as the big 3 go. Le'Veon's still coming back. Zeke looked good, and he's playing a team that can be run on. It's just the perfect formula for success. I think that's going to happen, and he's actually relatively cheap on DFS.
Yeah, he's $7,800. It's because he's drawing the Broncos defense, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah, people are afraid of them because they are a good defense. They're not a good rush defense.
They are not a good rush defense.
On the Broncos side, don't play Benny Fowler. You could play Demaryius Thomas. The Cowboys don't have a shutdown corner, but it's more than likely he's too expensive.
Yeah, I think that was my point more than anything else. Demaryius Thomas, he's okay price. Like he's actually pretty good value this week. If you want to fire him up, he's $5,900. That's a fair price. Like I would fire him up for $5,900. I just think that there's other people in that area that are either higher ceiling for cash games or are a higher higher floor for cash games or a higher ceiling for tournament play. So that's the reason that I'm kind of fading Demaryius.
I think DT's a reasonable cash game play. I agree with you. His ceiling. I don't think you should ever play him in a tournament this year.
Just because of Trevor Siemian, it's not DT.
Siemian just limits his ceiling way too much. I think that you should never play him in a tournament this year.
Yeah, I agree. 49ers Seahawks. I'm actually going to go against the grain on this one. I think that I've looked at historic Shanahan X receiver, and as long as that guy isn't complete garbage, he makes decent hay against the Seahawks. They're just really good at smothering the middle of the field. They're really good at stopping. They're really good at stopping the run. They weren't as good last year, but they will be better this year. And then they just get pressure on the quarterback. So they do like to throw the ball deep to Marquise Goodwin, and I'm not sure that they have. I think that it'll be good on play action. Earl Thomas is pretty fast. He might be able to cover that deep. I'm not like all over the 49ers or anything this week, but I don't want anybody from the Seattle side of the ball. Like I just don't think that they're good. And I think that the 49ers front four will get pressure on Wilson, and they're all fast, so they might be able to chase him down. Like this might be a rough week for Wilson.
Yeah, I feel less good about the Niners against the Seahawks defense. I don't think that their offensive line's good enough to give Hoyer time, and I think Hoyer might just implode. So I'm not playing any of the Niners this week. The Seahawks, we've said it before, we'll say it again, they're kind of slow starters. So,
yeah.
Until their offensive line really gets it together, I'm not playing any of those guys in DFS.
Yeah, I'm not playing any of them DFS. If you have Baldwin, you start him in season long. If you have Wilson, you start him in season long. I'm not starting any of their running backs. If you have Jimmy Graham, you can start him in season long. That's probably all I want from that game, though.
Yeah, again, this is important, and we'll do it for you as far as watching the game goes. But Seahawks are a team that you really need to watch the games, because once you see their offensive line start clicking, that's when you're going to get really good value for some of these guys, because their value will drop. You see their offensive line start to click in a game, like, okay, it's coming soon. Then you buy low.
Here it goes. You ride a roller coaster. That's what you do.
And all right, so Redskins Rams. This one will be interesting. The Rams have, they played the Colts last year, which is like a JV defense. Now they're playing like a very, very, very low level NFL defense with the Redskins. Redskins are a great team to bet against because they score a lot of points and they don't play defense very well. So like they put pressure on the other team to score. The other team's got to keep throwing. But at the same time, they don't really try to stop you very well. Or they don't do a good job of trying to stop you.
They definitely don't do a good job, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I think this will actually be a pretty good fantasy game. It should provide some good values here. Gurley, I'm still afraid of a little bit. Not because of the Redskins, because he just hasn't done anything it's been a long time since he's been a good running back.
I think it's a product of system and line. I don't think he's incapable of doing stuff, but you're right. It's almost like a confidence thing at this point. It's like, when is he going to get it back? He needs to show it to me that he's going to do it before he actually inspires me to actually play him in any meaningful way. I'd obviously play him in season long. He's got a great floor. He just has so much volume, but his ceiling is yikes. So I'm not playing him at all. Joe, you and I talked a lot about the Rams receiver that we wanted this week, because we do want one of them. And I think we finally came to the final deliberation was that it's Robert Woods this week, because he's going to draw Bashaud Breeland. We think that Cooper Kupp is going to draw Fuller out of the slot, who actually did reasonably well guarding Aguilar last week, but Aguilar kind of sucks. And then we think that Norman is going to draw Sammy Watkins for most of this game. I think Woods is good for at least one long touchdown, maybe two. I think that's the play this week in tournament, especially. But I don't really want anybody. Like Cooper Kupp might be okay to play in your season long and stuff like that, but I don't really want anybody from this game other than that, just because I think that the Redskins are going to start slow again. I just think that the Rams are going to bring so much pressure, and Cousins could barely breathe last week. If you have Cousins and Pryor, you're starting them in season long. Crowder, you're starting them in season long. Even Rob Kelly, you could probably start him in season long. But for DFS, I don't want any of those Redskins. I really don't.
Yeah, I pretty much agree for the most part on all of that stuff. The Redskins just need a couple more weeks. They will be good.
They will be good.
They just need a couple more weeks.
Trade for them now. Trade for them now.
They may not be a good football team. They'll be a good fantasy team.
Yeah, I don't care about their football team.
They're just not ready yet. I said my favorite fantasy game of the week was Pats Saints. This one's got to be yours, Packers Falcons.
It is my favorite game of the week, and for good reason. I think that both of their defenses are just very underwhelming. The Falcons' defense is just bad enough at getting pressure that the Green Bay can operate the backyard football style of offense, but with success. Like they really can. Jordy should be a sure lock to get a long touchdown this week. The Falcons have good cornerbacks, but I just think that he winds up getting behind them. Devontae Adams is going to be a slam dunk play this week. I think Randall Cobb will be a less good of a slam dunk play this week. He just happens to be the type of player that beats up the Seahawks. Dude, Ty Montgomery is my jam this week. He is so much he's getting so much more work than I originally thought that they were going to give him. Joe, he played for 74 snaps. They played like 80 snaps total. He played for 74 of them. 74. Jamal Williams.
74 snaps is more than most teams played last week.
That's exactly right. He played such a high percentage, 90+% of their snaps, and Jamal Williams played 6 total snaps. I'm not trying to rub this in your face. This isn't a you thing. Nobody could have understood that they were going to give him this much time, but he bulked up. He looks good. If you think that Jamal Williams is taking the job over from this guy anytime at least soon, you're crazy. You're absolutely high off your mind. So Ty Montgomery is my jam this week. Atlanta is the worst against running backs, especially pass catching running backs. Fire up Ty Montgomery all the time. He got 23 touches last week. He's a lock. He's perfect this week. He's just a great play. And then on the other side of the ball, Green Bay can't cover Julio. Green Bay definitely can't cover both of these running backs. They might be able to do one. They have some decent linebackers. They have some fast guys, but Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman are solid players. I mean, they just are, and they're better than most of the running backs that the Packers will see throughout the majority of the year. And I think that they try and establish the run game a bit better this year so that they can get Julio going. So I'll play everybody in this game besides Matt Ryan.
Play everyone.
Like, play all of them.
In conclusion, play them all.
Yeah, play everyone.
The Monday game, Lions at the Giants. We mentioned earlier, Giants are still kind of a mess. The Lions' defense looked better than we thought, although that might have been a function of Carson Palmer being bad. But they still did a pretty good job of holding David Johnson, or limiting him to a reasonable day before he went down. So I'm still staying away from the Giants. Keep an eye on what Odell Beckham's doing. If he's playing, of course, play him in your season-long leagues. I'm not playing him in DFS yet. He's not going to play as many snaps as you want him to play. Considering the price you'll be paying for him. So I'm not playing any Giants in DFS. Lions, Galladay, not playing him in DFS.
No. Don't do it.
The Giants defense is good.
Yeah,
Giants defense is good. So I'm not firing up Stafford or anything like that, but Golden Tate is still going to produce.
Golden Tate will produce. He's the type of receiver that the Giants struggle with a bit. Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay are the type that they just shut down every single time. Eli Apple and Janoris Jenkins are just good at shutting them down. They're good players. I don't think you see a lot of running production out of this game. I think Golden Tate really tears them up, and I think you see a lot of dump-off passes. I think Eric Ebron has a decent game. I'm just still not advocating playing him in DFS. I just don't do it, but I do think that he has a good game. I think Stafford finds a way in this game more than anything else. I'm playing the Lions defense, dude. Like, I'll play the Lions defense all day. Let me ask you this question, Joe. Do you want a prima donna who already is inconsistent because he likes one-handed catches more than two-handed catches, and also has a bum ankle when most of the plays that he operates out of the slot, and most of the routes that he runs are good, crisp routes that he needs his speed for? Do you want that guy?
Not this week.
Not this week when he's still got a hurt ankle.
He's not one of these guys who's gonna he can body you. He's good, but he's more about his speed and his quickness and his athleticism. Having a bad ankle really takes that away. I think if he plays, he's more of a decoy than anything until he gets better. In addition to that, I don't know if he's going to deliver on this or not, but he said that he has no interest in playing with any kind of ankle brace or tape. He wants to play all natural. Yeah. That's reckless.
It's reckless to do in the NFL when your job job relies on your body, right? I think that's an irresponsible thing to do if you're trying to get back. You're trying to rush yourself back, and then you also don't want to play with basically what is the healthiest alternative, right? So yeah, I just don't want him this week. I think I think like you said, he'll be a decoy if anything, if he really plays. I just don't want any part of the Giants offense. I really wouldn't even play their defense either. And this would also require you to play the Thursday, Monday game. And I'm not really all that interested in that. So, I would just sort of stay away from this game other than Golden Tate. I think Golden Tate's a pretty good play this week. That's it.
All right. I think that's pretty much all that we have this week.
Yep.
Sorry for going a little over. Try to keep it. And for starting late, I promise that I won't bust up my face playing basketball again next week because I'll be getting my stitches out at this time.
Yeah, no doubt. It happens. At least we still got the stream underway and everything, guys. Just remember to, when you're looking at waivers and stuff like that, and you're looking at the whole scope of what you're trying to do for the season, make sure that you're making smart decisions and trying to stay a step ahead rather than a step behind. Okay. You'll see that the people who are winning this season are the people who prepared their teams ahead of time and were keen on handcuffing the right people when they needed to be handcuffed instead of picking a worthless 16 round guy or something like that. You'll notice that people are picking up the guy for 3 weeks down the road or 2 weeks down the road rather than right now and a week behind. Just try and have some foresight. And once again, if you need any help, reach out to us. You can join our Discord. I'll post it in the description. You can check us out on Twitter. It's @FantasyEliteFB. We changed our Twitter handle because we got one that we thought fit a little bit better. Check us out on Facebook. It's just Fantasy Elite. Make sure that on YouTube you hit the subscribe button. That helps notify when we go live, so that you'll know if Joe hits his face and gets split open. We're not going live at the regular time. We're going live a little bit later. If we decide to go live for a random stream, maybe on the weekend before the games, it'll notify you of that, and it also helps us out. So make sure that you leave a comment if you have any questions, anything like that, and just be a part of the community. Get questions into us. We answered a bunch of questions today to help people with waiver pickups. We answered a bunch of questions for people yesterday. Just try and be active around the community, and we'll help you guys out. Let's go win some money this week, guys. We'll catch y'all next week, okay?
Yeah, best of luck. Stay classy.
Peace out.